Part 14. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 131. Looking at the stall owner with "Don't come over" written all over his face, Zhang Yuniang only felt funny. "Brother, the little Fuwa is here," said the stall owner's younger brother. When the stall owner heard this, he turned around and glared at his idiot brother and said, "You need to remind me, I have eyes and can see." The idiot brother laughed, and then said, "I don't know if she will win the jackpot this time." The stall owner's nose was almost crooked with anger and he said, "You can't just hope for something better." Niu struggled to squeeze in and wanted to hand over the money to the stall owner. The stall owner took other people's money first, and then while waiting for others to play, he quietly said to Niu, "Little Fuwa, let's discuss it. You can play later. You are so lucky. You won the jackpot in one go. I won all the money, so I have nothing to gain." Niu is a considerate little girl. When she heard the other parties begging, she didn't stalk her. Instead, she said, "Then let my family play first. I can play last. I'm not in a hurry." After hearing this, the stall owner hesitated for a moment and finally agreed. He thought to himself that Niu was lucky, so he admitted it. It made no sense that her family members were also very lucky. Besides Niu, Gu Zhao is the youngest. He has long been overheard at home about his sister winning the grand prize in poker, and now he is eager to give it a try. "Niu, have you chosen? Which one do you like?" Gu Zhao asked. When the stall owner heard his question, his heart suddenly rose to his throat, fearing that Niu would just ask for the most expensive gold hairpin. "Suiunsu. My favorite food," Niu said crisply. The stall owner breathed a sigh of relief. A pack of suiun cake only cost 20 or 30 cents at most, which was completely acceptable to him. Gu Zhao played for the first time. He was stronger than Niu and could throw the darts onto the turntable without the help of adults. Twice in a row, both failed. By the third time, Gu Zhao was quite disheartened and threw it away, but it accurately landed in the grid representing pastries. The stall owner quickly handed a pack of suiun crisps to Gu Zhao and said, "I'm lucky, little brother. Do you want to play a few more times?" Gu Zhao shook his head and said no money honestly. Then he happily gave the cake to Niu and asked, "Am I the best brother?" Niu said softly, "Third brother is so good." Gu Zhao winked at Guyan proudly. Guyan, who had never fought or grabbed, suddenly clenched his fists and took a step forward to indicate that he would come first. The little boy stared closely at the two flowers painted on the turntable. The turntable rotated, and the young boy threw 3 darts one after another. The turntable slowly stopped. "Oh, this little guy is very lucky. 2 out of 3, he got 2 high-quality silk flowers," the stall owner said with a smile. He calculated the accounts silently in his mind, and up until now, he had made a profit. Guyan was very restrained and remained unmoved by the stall owner's temptation to encourage him to play a few more times. He picked 2 light pink silk flowers from a stall nearby and brought them to Niu. Where one on each side, Guyan looked at the 2 little tweets on Niu's head tenderly. Zhang Yuniang took it and put the silk flower on her daughter's head on the spot. Niu turned around briskly and asked in a crisp voice, "Does it look good?" Zhang Yuniang nodded. "Beautiful, there is no more beautiful girl than our sweet baby," Lu Xiru continued to make rainbow farts. Guyan waited and waited. Niu turned around several times before she stopped and said to him, "Brother, be nice to me." Guyan made a fist with his right hand and put it against his mouth, and said as if unintentionally, "As long as you like it." It was just the smile lines at the corners of his eyes that revealed his true inner thoughts. Ms. Gu watched her grandchildren win prizes one after another, and she was already eager to try. After getting 3 darts, she kept chanting, "Jinchai, Jinchai, I want Jinchai." The stall owner was very excited. But the result made him very happy. Mrsku voted 3 times and only got a handkerchief. Why did you miss the shot? Mrsku muttered in a low voice. The stall owner encouraged me happily, Auntie, you are very lucky. You will probably hit the target soon. How about you try again? Mrsku actually looked moved. Seeing her mother-in-law trying to pay again, Zhang Yuniang stretched out her hand to stop her and whispered, Mom, the children are watching. When Mrsku turned around, she saw the 3 children staring at her with their eyes wide open. The old lady remembered that she had repeatedly taught her sons not to gamble. After all, she still had some sense. She took back the hand that touched the money and turned to the children, Look, gambling is so scary. People like me can't bear it, stay up there. The 3 children immediately and obediently promised, Grandma, don't worry, we will only vote 3 at a time, and we will never be greedy for more. Zhang Yuniang set an example and never voted in. When Lu Xiru saw that she wasn't playing, she didn't participate either. Niu, it's your turn, Mrsku urged. Niu did not step forward immediately, but looked around and said, Grandpa hasn't played yet. Father Gu has always been confused, and his family rarely asks him what he thinks, but today they just ignored him. Mrsku said casually, Your grandpa doesn't play. But as soon as she finished speaking, Father Gu took 2 steps forward and felt around for a long time but couldn't find much money. Niu hurried forward and helped Grandpa pay the money. Dad Gu took the 3 darts and looked at them, as if he didn't know what to do. Niu pointed obediently from the side, Grandpa, throw the darts onto the turntable. The turntable is too fast. You don't know what it will hit. You can only rely on luck. Dad Gu picked up the dart and threw it slowly. The turntable stops. The whole place was in an uproar. It's the jackpot. The old man won the jackpot, someone shouted excitedly. Anyone with eyes can see that Father Gu's condition is not very normal. They were still muttering that this family was so willing to throw 60 pennies away to an old man with an abnormal brain, but they didn't expect it. People are the ones who truly hide their secrets. The stall owner had a mournful face. He didn't expect that there was not only a little lucky baby, but also a big lucky star. This family is like his nemesis. The only thing he felt lucky was that Father Gu hit this one, and the other 2 darts all missed. After Father Gu got the gold hairpin, he slowly brought it to Mrsku. Old woman, where a gold hairpin? Father Gu said vaguely. Mrsku almost shed tears and explained to her family, the old man made a lot of money from winemaking that year, and he said he would buy me a golden hairpin so that I can enjoy the same happiness as the landowner grandma. It's a pity that the 3rd child got seriously ill that year, and the family spent almost all their money, and they were never able to save that much money again. Zhang Yuniang looked gentle and said softly, Mom, Dad has always been thinking about you in his heart. Even if he is ill and confused, he still remembers it. The corners of Mrsku's mouth curled up, and her eyes when she looked at Mr. Gu were so gentle that they could shed tears. It's a pity that the charming look was given to a blind man. Although Mr. Gu personally inserted the golden hairpin into his wife's hair, he added, I will pass it on to Niu in the future. When Mrsku heard this, her eyes that had softened suddenly became sharp again, and she said, I will definitely pass this thing on to Niu. You need to tell me. You bastard, you just hope that I will die soon. You don't even know how to make me happy by saying something nice. Father Gu was scolded by his wife, and a trace of confusion flashed in his muddy old eyes, and then he said blankly, It's good looking, it's beautiful. First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 132. When Mrsku saw him like this, she felt angry and funny. Forget it, Let me argue with an old fool. After speaking, Mrsku took out the money from her pocket and handed it to Niu Niu quietly. Niu Niu had previously helped the old man pay 60 cents for throwing darts. The old lady had already obtained the clothes and was unwilling to continue to take advantage of the child, so she secretly gave the money to Niu Niu. The stall owner, who had just lost his gold hairpin, glanced at Dadgu, and then at Niu Niu, who was still waiting to throw darts. Unable to resist the enthusiasm of the crowd, he gritted his teeth and took out a new gold hairpin. Mrsku's eyes lit up and she hurriedly urged Niu Niu, it's your turn. But Niu Niu shook her head and said, forget it, I won't play anymore. I don't have anything special I want. Niu Niu could vaguely sense the stall owner's fear of her, and she didn't like this fear. Mrsku looked pitiful and said, our little boy is so good, if you play, you will definitely win a jackpot. Niu Niu raised her little face and said with a smile, our family has won the jackpot once, let's give the opportunity to others. The children had said so, and Mrsku did not force her even if she regretted it. However, the stall owner felt relieved when he saw Niu Niu leaving with her family. I'm coming. I'm coming. I came first, and I want to compete for the top prize with Old Lucky Star. The last time someone followed Niu Niu to win gold was still vivid in his mind, so this time there were still many people frantically vying for the position behind Gu. The Gu family ignored what happened behind them and continued to stroll in the market. After all, it was the official day of the Dragon Boat Festival, and there was a lot of excitement in the market. Counting carefully, this was Niu Niu's first time watching a sideshow. The little girl watched the fire-breathing performance without moving her eyes, for fear of missing some exciting part. Even though her little face was flushed by the afternoon sun, Niu Niu still didn't move a step. Her eyes were bright and she clapped her hands very hard. After finally waiting until the performance was over, Niu Niu still had a face full of satisfaction. When the jugglers held up the trays to beg for rewards, Niu Niu casually threw out a handful of coins without counting them. This move made Mrsku's eyes jump. My dear, just give me 2 or 3 copper coins. Actually, you don't need to give that much. Mrsku couldn't hold back and whispered to Niu Niu. Niu Niu said doubtfully, their performances are really wonderful. The uncle with a broken chest, the sister who breathed fire, and the kid spinning the frisbee all look so hard. I think they are worth so much money. Mrsku was stunned when she heard this. She didn't expect that Niu Niu had her own unique consumption concept, and she didn't know what to say. Niu Niu said again, Grandma, I will make more money to honor you in the future, so that you don't have to worry about these small money. Mrsku was stunned by her granddaughter's pie. She felt that the more money she spent, the more money she would make. There was nothing wrong with this logic. In the end, it was her love for her granddaughter that prevailed. Mrsku said with a smile, hey, our good baby still thinks, generous and smart, unlike me, Grandma, who is a stingy person. Niu Niu acted coquettishly against Mrsku and said, Grandma is not stingy. Grandma is the best grandma. Anyway, according to Niu Niu, everyone in the family is the best grandpa/grandma/parents/brother/aunt, but the family just does this, and Niu Niu coaxes her into confusion every time. The market was very lively. After walking 2 steps further, I saw someone setting up a stall selling sundries. There was a circle of people pointing and pointing in front of the stall, but few people took the initiative to buy anything. Why is this prodigal son of the Zheng family setting up a stall to sell things every day? Haven't all the things in his house been sold out? You don't know this. It was said that a man bought a pair of his ancestors' calligraphy at his stall and sold it at a high price. But he was smart and bought a lot of worthless ones. Toys, real and fake, are mixed together and sold. Hearing this, the Gu family suddenly felt eye-opening. Both Niu Niu and Zhang Yuniang remembered Zheng Deidu. When Niu Niu came to the county for the first time, she bought a golden turtle with black paint from Zheng Datu's stall. Zhang Yuniang and her husband never made it known to the outside world. If this matter really comes out, Zheng Datu's stall will be robbed. Zhang Yuniang was in charge of the number of times Niu Niu was knocked off, but she didn't care how she spent her other money. She didn't care when she rewarded jugglers with large sums of money before, but now she doesn't care when Niu Niu squats in front of Zheng's stall and learns from others. Guyan and Gu Zhao squatted with her and helped her read the details, while the rest of the Gu family waited patiently. Mrs. Gu stood there, looking at her little granddaughter for a while, then reaching out to touch the gold hairpin stuck on the back of her head, and snickering from time to time. Niu Niu flipped through it for a long time, but she couldn't understand the calligraphy and paintings. Instead, she fell in love with a sky blue porcelain brush washer. "How much does this cost?" Niu Niu asked Zheng Datu, who was setting up the stall, in a crisp voice. Zheng Datu set up a stall almost every day. After setting up the stall, he took the money and went gambling. After gambling all his money, he continued to sell goods. There were many people coming and going at his stall, and he didn't even remember Niu who bought something from his stall last year. "This is the brush washer used by my ancestor who was the prime minister. Seeing as you are a little girl, I won't lie to you. The price is 30 taels of silver." Zheng Datu opened his mouth. The crowd of onlookers continued to point and point. Zheng Datu is really nothing. He even deceives little girls. Zheng Datu didn't care about the gossip around him. He just shouted the price casually. He had no idea that a little girl half a person's height could afford such a price. But Niu didn't refute it immediately, but lowered her head and asked Guyan beside her, "Brother, how much is 10 taels, 15 taels, and 7 taels?" Niu got 40 taels of silver today, and her family was reluctant to spend too much money on her, so there was a lot left. She only had 10 fingers and couldn't calculate the account for a while. 32 taels, Guyan whispered. Zheng Datu instantly perked up when he heard this. He didn't expect that this little girl, who looked like a middle-class family, actually had money on her. "Little girl, my baby is very popular. If you miss this village, you won't have this store anymore." Zheng Datu is quite good at creating anxiety. Before Niu spoke, old lady Gu thought of the incident with the juggler just now, and thought that her silly granddaughter really spent money for the things she liked. Old lady Gu was worried that Niu would suffer a loss, so she rushed over and scolded Zheng Datu, "You wicked thing, how dare you cheat my child? Is this broken brush washer something precious? I don't know where you picked it up from, but you said it was passed down from your ancestors. You thought it was made of gold, and you dared to ask for 30 taels of silver. I tell you, we may not even buy it for 5 cents of silver." Niu squatted on the ground, opened her mouth, and looked at old lady Gu, who was full of fighting spirit. "My dear, let's go, Grandma will take you to another store to buy a brush washer." Old lady Gu pulled Niu up and was about to leave. Niu whispered, "Grandma, I like this one." But Mrs. Gu insisted, saying, "No, we won't be wronged. A pen washer only costs a few dollars. Grandma will buy you a better one." Niu looked at the sky blue pen washer on the stall with entanglement. In the end, she still cared more about her family. After hesitating for a moment, she nodded obediently, "Okay, let's go buy it somewhere else." Zheng Datu saw that the cooked duck was about to fly away, and he was so anxious that he hurriedly said, "Grandma, let's talk nicely. Don't curse at me right away. The price can be negotiated." Mrs. Gu thought that gamblers really have no dignity. She cursed so harshly, but Zheng Datu was still licking his face and negotiating with her to earn some gambling money. But she stopped in her tracks and said with a sullen face, "You should do business properly. You won't get far if you cheat like this." Zheng Datu still had a smile on his face and said, "You are right. I will do business properly." Do you think 10 taels of silver is okay? Old Lady Gu sneered and said, 5 cents is too much for me. Zheng Datu hurriedly said, okay, 5 cents is 5 cents. The second update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 133. Zheng Datu was so confused from gambling that he couldn't figure out whether he bought the money from the dealer or passed it down from his ancestors, but as long as he had money, he was satisfied. Holding 5 pieces of silver, he was happily thinking about how to gamble and maximize the money. But before he could close the stall, someone was waiting aside. The salesman stretched out his hand and directly asked for the money that Zheng Datu had previously owed on credit. Zheng Datu was anxious. Good brother, why did you snatch them all? Leave some for me. The salesman sneered and said, you've already paid for your next purchase. If I weren't afraid that you'd have nothing to eat, I wouldn't bother to care about you. Zheng Datu. He endured it again and again, not daring to say anything, for fear that his only remaining friend would fall out with him and leave him alone. Good brother, did I get a sky blue porcelain pen washer from you before? Zheng Datu asked casually. The salesman said, I am a salesman, why do I buy such things? Zheng Datu was stunned when he heard this. Ah! Is this thing really passed down from my ancestors? After saying that, he slapped his thigh and cried, the treasure passed down from our ancestors was sold for 5 cents of silver? I lost a lot. The salesman watched his performance without any fluctuation in his expression. If you cry louder, it's a bit fake now. I'm afraid others won't believe you. The sadness in Zheng Datu's eyes was real. He cried so hard that his voice trembled. It's true, this time it's true, it's not the same words as last time. The reason why Zheng Datu is able to run a stall business is because of the calligraphy scam last time. He said that someone picked up the original calligraphy of his ancestors and sold it at a high price, which attracted people to flock to it. The salesman didn't care, and said, what's there to cry about? You have gambled away so many things from your ancestors, and I haven't seen you so sad. If you are really sad, your ancestors underground should be more sad to see the prodigal son. Zheng Datu. Compared with the misery here, the Gu family returned with a full load. Grandma is so awesome. With a little trick, I was able to buy this pen washer for a small amount of money. At first, I really thought Grandma wouldn't let me buy it, Niu Niu said loudly. Ms. Gu was very happy when she saw her granddaughter holding the pen and loving it. She said, my dear, these people who set up stalls are the most hateful. They charge exorbitant prices for their products and they will kill everyone they can. Next time you encounter this kind of situation, just go there. If you bargain hard, he'll quote you 30 taels, and you'll just ask for 5 cents. As Ms. Gu talked, she actually regretted it and said, I overpaid even 5 cents. If I met a gambler like this, he would probably sell even 1 cent. If I had known better, I would have quoted 1 cent. Niu Niu looked at Ms. Gu with admiration and said, Grandma, you are so smart. The simpler the compliment, the more satisfied Ms. Gu will be. She said happily, you have a lot to learn. Grandma, my decades of salt are not in vain. Niu Niu nodded vigorously and said, I want to be as powerful as Grandma. As soon as she entered the Gu family's house, Niu Niu rushed into the study like a whirlwind and presented the azure brush to Gu Mingda like a treasure. Although today was the Dragon Boat Festival, Gu Mingda did not relax at all. He was still studying hard at home. He did not expect that his daughter would actually bring a gift when she went out. I fell in love with this pen washer at first glance. When I saw it, I thought of my father. Grandma helped me negotiate the price, and I bought it for only a little money. Nayunio said in a coquettish voice about the process of buying a pen washer. Listening to the child's intermittent description, Gu Mingde probably understood what kind of story this was. He was very complimentary and said, "Grandma is great, and Nayunio is also well behaved." If Nayunio hadn't cooperated well, Grandma wouldn't have been able to buy the things so cheaply. Niu Niu raised her little face and asked, "Does Daddy like this gift?" "As long as it's from Nayunio, Daddy likes it," Gu Mingde said softly. His words were not adulterated at all. Whatever Nayunio gave him, even if it was a leaf, he would make it into a bookmark and put it in a book for careful collection. Gu Mingde casually turned the pen over and looked at the red signature at the bottom with a startled expression. "Blue flowers and spring rain," Gu Mingde murmured. Niu Niu curiously came over to look at it together, then pointed to the 4 small characters on the red signature and asked, "Dad, why would someone put this kind of seal on by washing? Is this the name of by washing?" Gu Mingde took a deep breath and said, "Nayunio, you have come back with another incredible treasure." Niu Niu looked at him doubtfully. Gu Mingde pointed to the seal and showed it to his daughter and said, "Blue and white spring rain is one of the 108 commonly used seals of Emperor Taizong of the Yan dynasty." Yan dynasty, Niu Niu hadn't started studying history yet, so she didn't know what dynasty it was. The last emperor of the Yan dynasty was 200 years ago. Emperor Taizong of the Yan dynasty was also a heroic figure. Counting his life, he had 8 great achievements. Niu Niu was mesmerized as she listened to Gu Mingde's detailed talk about the past of the emperor of the old dynasty. "I didn't expect there to be such a powerful person. I heard people say that the grassland people are good at riding and shooting, and they are all brave and good at fighting. I didn't expect that they would be defeated by us Central Plains people." Niu Niu sighed with emotion. Gu Mingde said, "Back then, this emperor had a terrible reputation on the grassland for being able to stop children from crying at night. It's a pity that such a powerful man died in depression after Queen Yuanyi died of illness." Nayunio couldn't help but sigh. His wife must want him to live long and not suffer so much. Gu Mingde patted his daughter's head and said, "It is a pity that people today cannot see the style of the ancient sages." Nayunio asked again, "Since it is something used by such a big man, how come the Zheng family can't recognize it? Just sell it casually." Gu Mingde explained, "Emperor Taizong of Yan has many seals, and there are 108 seals that are often used. It is unlikely that ordinary people can remember every one of them clearly, not to mention that the Zheng family son is obsessed with gambling. I'm afraid he can't even read a few words, so how can he distinguish them clearly?" Gu Mingde guessed that this brush washer might be an accidental acquisition of the Zheng family's ancestors. His ancestors might not know that this item was once used by the emperor. "Dad is not an ordinary person, so he remembers everything clearly," Nayunio said with a smile. Although Gu Mingde likes to listen to his daughter's flattery, he is a pragmatic person. He smiled and said, "The historical materials of the previous dynasty are missing, and no one can tell clearly what the 108 seals are. I accidentally read a travelogue of the Yan dynasty and learned that the blue and white spring rain seal was given by Empress Yuanyi." Nayunio tilted her head and said, "Since it was given by the queen, Yan Taizha must have cherished it very much. This brush washer is so precious." Gu Mingde listened to his daughter and explained patiently, "These old items are valuable. First, look at the production techniques and the completeness of preservation. Second, look at who the old owner of the old item was. The more noble the person who used it, the higher the price will be. The old items of Emperor Taizong of the Yan dynasty may be related to Empress Yuanyi. I think many dignitaries are flocking to it. It may be worth 1,000 gold. When you arrive in the capital, Dad will find a good buyer for your brush washer." Nayunio corrected, "Dad, this is your brush washer." First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Mu Yun Shen Shen. Chapter 134. Gu Mingda said so many things to prove the preciousness of the pen washer, but he didn't expect Niunio to insist on giving it to him. My dear, the pen washer may be sold for thousands of taels of silver. If you meet someone who really knows the business, it may be sold for more. You can take this money and live a worry-free life in the future. Gu Mingda reiterated to his daughter the preciousness of the pen washer. Niunio insisted, no matter how much it is worth, it's just a gift. Niunio gave it to Daddy. Will Daddy sell it for money? Gu Mingda didn't know what to say for a moment. Niunio asked again, Dad is so familiar with the story of Emperor Taizong of Yan, you must like him very much. Gu Mingda didn't expect his daughter to be so smart, and said, Dad only regrets that he was born in the wrong dynasty. If he lived a few hundred years ago, Dad would definitely give up literature and join the military, serve under Emperor Taizong of Yan, and go with him to fight the grassland people. Niunio had seen Gu Mingda's love for the pen washer before, and said, so Niunio bought the pen washer for the right person. Dad will definitely cherish this gift. Gu Mingda's nose was sour, his daughter was too considerate, and a thing worth 1,000 gold was just a gift that her father liked in her eyes. This pen washer was finally placed in the deep of the cabinet by Gu Mingda with great care, and he took it out to enjoy it when he was tired of reading. Except Zhang Yuniang, no one else knew that this pen washer was an old item worth 1,000 gold. A few days after the Dragon Boat Festival, all the Gu family members moved. Gu Yun asked for leave from the government office, and Gu Mingda put down his books. Early in the morning, the whole family took a carriage back to Qingshui village. The Gu family came and went in Qingshui village. Today was the day when Gu Laosan remarried. In the past few months, Gu Xiao and Gu Xiaobao had been in contact with Zheng Kui'er. Gu Xiao was not opposed to her father remarrying, but Gu Xiaobao suddenly left his mother Lu Erni, and made a fuss for a few days, but he was coaxed soon. The Lu family did not have any good intentions. They all lived in the same village. Even if they were cruel enough to sell Lu Erni to the mountains as a common wife, they would still instigate the two children when they had nothing to do. In words and deeds, they were all blaming Gu Laosan and Zheng Kui'er. Today, the Gu family was very happy. The Lu family did not receive an invitation at all, but it did not stop these people from finding opportunities to catch the two children and talk nonsense. With a stepmother, there will be a stepfather. Your life will be miserable in the future, Lu Lao'ni said while wiping her tears, pretending to be distressed for them. Gu Xiaobao was young and soft-hearted. Hearing this, he immediately looked at his sister Gu Xiao with tears in his eyes. Gu Xiao rolled her eyes on the spot and said, our stepmother is a good person. She used to help Niunio with work. I told you more than a dozen times that she can't be mean to us. Why are you crying again? Lu Laoniang said again, your father remarried so quickly. Did he have any scandal with Zheng Kui'er? Poor my daughter, she was divorced and sent home without any fault. Gu Xiao had heard these words so many times that her ears were call-used. She said casually, no matter how fast he remarried, it's not as fast as my mother's remarriage. My mother left home because she stole money from home. She was wrong. Her biggest mistake was that she was your daughter and only knew how to steal things for her uncles every day. When Lu Laoniang heard this, she was so angry that her nose was about to smoke. She said, you child, how can you talk to your elders? Lu Laoniang didn't take her own daughter seriously, so naturally she wouldn't take her granddaughter seriously. She raised her hand to hit her. Before Gu Xiao could run, a figure rushed out from her side. Get lost, the two families have long lost their relationship, stop dragging my granddaughter here to talk nonsense. If Niu Niu hadn't said that she couldn't find Xiao, Grandma Gu wouldn't have thought of looking for her. When the old lady saw Lu Laoniang, she was immediately furious and picked up a broom to beat her. Lu Laoniang was unhappy and said, you mean old hag, why are you beating people when your family is having a wedding today? I want to let the villagers see. Grandma Gu was impatient to listen to her rambling. Anyway, the two families had fallen out a long time ago, and the grandchildren didn't recognize this grandmother, so she picked up a broom and started fighting again. Niu Niu shouted from the side, "My grandma is not an old hag." "You are an old hag, you bully Xiao," grandma beat her. If Gu Xiao hadn't held Niu Niu tightly, Niu Niu really wanted to find a broom to join the battle. Old Lady Gu chased Old Lady Lu for half a mile. When she saw that everyone had run away, she walked back with a broom in her hand. When she arrived at the door of her house, she saw a group of old ladies sitting on benches in the sun waiting for the wedding banquet. Old Lady Gu threw the broom and said, "Push, squeeze." The old ladies moved to the side skillfully and made a place for Old Lady Gu. "Mother of the scholar, you have made it now and followed your son to the city. Life is so good. Look at how fat you have become. Oh, your clothes are so beautiful. They are not cheap, are they?" the old ladies said in unison. Old Lady Gu raised her head slightly. Did she wear new clothes to go back to the village to attend her son's wedding banquet? Of course not. She was here for this moment, to let the old ladies in the village see that she is now a city person. She is living a good life. This dress was given by Niu as a gift. I tried to stop her from buying it, but she was so stubborn. How could this dress be so expensive? It actually cost 2 taels of silver. The city is not that good. Everything you eat and use costs money. It's very expensive. Old Lady Gu pretended to complain, but in fact she was showing off. You are lucky. Your husband loves you and your son is also promising. Niu is so powerful now. When I saw her just now, I didn't dare to recognize her. Her face was so white and she was so well dressed. She even had silver bells hanging on her hair. Some people believed her even if she was a young lady from a wealthy family in the city. Yes, who would have thought that such a beautiful little girl was almost killed by that bad guy Zhang Guangzong? Let me tell you, it's the kindness of your old Gu family that raised her so well. When she suddenly heard Zhang Guangzong's name, Mrs. Gu was stunned for a moment. Then she thought of this man's fate and felt like everything was the same as in the previous life. We, Niu, are the lucky ones. Whoever we fall into will be prosperous, Mrs. Gu said. She was not happy to associate Niu with the Zhang family. A group of old ladies sighed with emotion. You are also kind-hearted and really treat Niu well. You don't know how miserable Mrs. is now. Her son has been exiled and her grandson has been lost. Her daughter and son-in-law can't be counted on. Last month she said she wanted to find her son. At home the old brick and tiled houses were all sold at a low price, and they left their hometowns when they got old. When everyone mentioned Granny Cai, they immediately lamented. At the age of a grandmother, she had to stay away from her homeland. In the future, she would not know where she would be buried. Old Mrs. Gu didn't want to hear these unlucky words from other ladies on such a happy day, so she touched her hair as if unintentionally, precisely letting everyone see the gold hairpin she was wearing. Oh, is this a gold hairpin? You are really better dressed than the landlord's grandmother. A group of old ladies surrounded Mrs. Gu and kept asking questions. After receiving the envy of the old sisters, Mrs. Gu was not only satisfied, but said deliberately, I am very old, so I have to wear gold and silver everywhere, but my old man always wants me to wear something nice. The golden hairpin was won by Guan Pu. Do you understand Guan Pu? It was obviously Mrs. Gu's highlight moment, but someone suddenly shouted. Let's get started. A group of old ladies couldn't care less about listening to Mrs. Gu show off. They dispersed in an instant and swarmed towards the banquet in the yard. Second update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 135. Old Lady Gu saw that her old sisters, who were familiar with her in the past, had hardly changed. When they met the banquet, they still fought for food, their faces were almost deformed, for fear of missing a piece of meat on the banquet. There were also old aunts who cared more about sisterhood and shouted to Old Lady Gu, "Why are you still dawdling there? If you don't grab the food, it will be gone." Old Lady Gu waved her hand. She had eaten all the good things in the county and had eaten in big restaurants several times. How could she care about the little things in the countryside? But her old sisters turned around and tried hard to grab food, while sighing to the people around them, "She is really rich, she doesn't even grab food." Old Lady Gu kept bragging about her good life, the new clothes on her body, and the gold hairpin on her head. In fact, this group of people still thought she was bragging. But now Old Lady Gu doesn't grab food at banquets. They really believe that Old Lady Gu is living a good life in the city. The old ladies sighed twice, then put it behind their minds and threw themselves into the great cause of grabbing food. "Niu, eat quickly. We don't need to go out and fight with others. You can eat in your own room." Chen Chunyua brought a bowl of rice with meat and vegetables to Niu. As the eldest sister-in-law, even if Chen Chunyua has a mediocre relationship with the third room, she has to help with all her strength when there is a wedding. It's hard for her to stay in the kitchen and sneak a bowl of rice to Niu. Niu didn't eat it immediately after taking it. Instead, she looked at Zheng Kuier sitting on the wedding bed and whispered, "Aunt, Sister Kuier hasn't eaten yet." Chen Chunyua immediately slapped her forehead and said, "Look at me, I forgot to prepare food for my third brother's wife." She didn't forget it on purpose, but she thought Zheng Kuier was not important, so she didn't pay attention to it. Her son's future still depends on the second room. Chen Chunyua can now bow her head. Niu said this, and she turned into the kitchen and brought back another bowl of food. Niu jumped off the chair, ran to Zheng Kuier, took her hand, and said softly, "Sister Kuier, come and eat." Zheng Kuier got up early in the morning to comb her hair. After being busy for so long, she was indeed hungry. She immediately lifted the red veil and followed Niu to the table in the house. "Sister Kuier, you look really good today," Niu praised. The child's eyes were clear and sincere, but Zheng Kuier knew her own family and said, "I have such a big scar on my face, no matter how I dress up, I won't look good." Niu shook her head and said, "In fact, if you see it too much, you will really think you are very beautiful. Zheng Kuier has a pretty face, but the birthmark is too big. Her birthmark is light red, which looks very abrupt at first glance, but it doesn't matter if you see it too much." Zheng Kuier forced a smile and said, "Niu, thank you for comforting me. She is just an ordinary girl. Her marriage has been full of twists and turns over the years. She has also been tossed to be inferior and sensitive. Although she is now married to a second married man, she is still worried about the other party's opinion." Niu was unhappy and said, "I was telling the truth. Sister Kuier is very pretty." Niu didn't lie. Zheng Kuier hugged Niu into her arms and said softly, Okay, sister said something wrong. Our Niu is the most obedient child." Niu muttered softly, "I didn't say anything wrong. Sister Kuier is beautiful and kind. It's a blessing for our family to marry into our family." Although she knew that what a child said could not be counted, Zheng Kuier was still very happy. She asked again, Niu, are you happy in this family?" Niu was immediately excited when she heard this question. "Happy, I live a fairy-like life in this family. My parents and grandparents treat me well. Whenever there is something delicious, they will never leave me out. My grandparents often cook for me." Speaking of the good things about her family, Niu felt that she could talk for 3 days and 3 nights. Zheng Kuier listened patiently. While she was happy for Niu, she couldn't help thinking that the Gu family was kind to their granddaughter who was not related to her by blood. She had more confidence in her future life. "Sister, Do you know what my grandmother said about you? Niu Niu asked. Zheng Kuier immediately became nervous, afraid that her mother-in-law didn't like her. My grandmother said that your family has a good family tradition, that your parents are good people, and that the daughter they raised must be good. She said that you are quick and diligent, and that you and your wife will live in harmony in the future. Niu Niu repeated the old lady's words in a serious manner. This was also a reassurance for Zheng Kuier. At least her mother-in-law liked her. The wedding banquet in Qingshui village was lunch, and the second room was ready to return after lunch. Chen Chunyua was busy for most of the day, and it was rare for her to have some free time to talk to Guyun. I heard that your second uncle has a braised food shop in the city. When did it open? How is the business? How much money does it make a day? Chen Chunyua's series of questions almost stunned Guyun. He said unhappily, Mom, are you interrogating the prisoner? Chen Chunyua said, I'm just curious. Guyun is no longer the Guyun who knew nothing in the past. After a few months of experience in the government office, he knew what his mother was thinking with a turn of his eyes. What does the braised food shop have to do with you? Don't ask about it. Chen Chunyua slapped him and said, You are so powerful that you are scolding me. Guyun was unhappy, I'm not wrong. Chen Chunyua whispered, I don't know where they got the braised food recipe. Did your grandparents give it to you? If it was passed down by the ancestors of the Gu family, we should have a copy. Guyun almost laughed when he heard this, and said, You are so bold, why don't you tell me that grandpa and grandma have hidden several houses in the county? If you continue like this, I'll come back once every 6 months. I'm tired of listening to all the nonsense calculations every day. Chen Chunyua was anxious when she heard this. She also knew that her guess was a bit outrageous. Although the old couple favored the second house, they were always clear about money. Okay, just ignore what I said. You should also be careful. If you can stay in the city in the future, you can find a city wife. When your father and I are old, we can still enjoy the city. Chen Chunyua's chattering made Guyun feel very annoyed. Okay, don't keep talking about these things. It's getting late. I seem to hear people calling outside. I'm going back to the county, Guyun said impatiently. Seeing her son leaving, Chen Chunyua was reluctant to let him go, and said, You've just come back and you have to go back. Can't you ask the government for a few more days off? Guyun replied casually, Okay, I'll ask my second uncle to tell my master, but it's a pity that it was originally my turn to patrol the market tomorrow. There is a lot of money to be made by patrolling the market, and you can get about 2 cents of silver each time. Guyun also mentioned this to Chen Chunyua. When Chen Chunyua heard this, she immediately urged him, The house is full of rags and tatters, and there's nothing good to keep. Go back quickly. Chen Chunyua changed her previous reluctant look and wanted to kick him out on the spot. First update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 136. After the Gu family's rented carriage left Qingshui village, old lady Gu muttered softly, It's so undignified to have to fight for a meal. Zhang Yuniang smiled awkwardly when she heard this. She didn't mention that old lady Gu was also a member of the food-grabbing group. Instead, she said, Mom, didn't you say you wanted to stay in the village for a while? Old lady Gu did have this idea before returning to the village, but after staying in the village for half a day, she felt uncomfortable everywhere. She was also thinking about the braised food shop, fearing that no one would help her and she would be too busy at home. There are so many things in the shop, how can I feel at ease? Old lady Gu replied casually. She was also paid for helping in the shop. This time, she used the money to buy a lot of snacks for several children at home. They surrounded her and called her good grandmother, and she felt comfortable in her heart. Although it's not like before, when one person managed the money of the whole family, now she earns money and spends it herself, but she doesn't have to be frugal. The third brother's wife is a good one. The shoes she made for Niu Niu have fine stitches and look like she put a lot of effort into it, old lady Gu said again. Zheng Kuier gave everyone in the family a pair of shoes. The shoes for Niu Niu and Gu Xiao were the most delicate, with delicate patterns embroidered on them. Niu Niu raised her feet on the spot to show her family members when she heard this. Zhang Yuniang said softly, the third brother has finally gotten his wish after all the hardship. Old lady Gu said, I just hope that the third brother won't be like those people who are superficial and mean to others because they think they are ugly. Although old third Gu said that he didn't care about the beauty of his new wife, he actually felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Although Lu Ernie had all kinds of problems, she was not bad looking, and her two children also had good looks like her. It was only when the candles were lit in the room at night, under the dim light, when old third Gu turned around, he saw Zheng Kuier looking at him gently. At this moment, the birthmarks on the woman's face seemed to be covered with a layer of light golden light. Gu Laosan suddenly felt that her former fiancé had a problem with his eyes. He was obviously beautiful, so why would he break off the engagement because of a birthmark? The days passed by faster and faster, and it was June in a blink of an eye. The Gu family packed their bags again, and this time they had a lot of things to pack. This year is the year of the provincial examination, and Gu Mingda must arrive in Zhangzhou Prefecture before August. The provincial examination is a major examination, and the examination site is not set up in the prefecture this year. This time, all the scholars from the 4 nearby prefectures will gather in Zhangzhou Prefecture to take the exam. You can't stay at home for the Mid-Autumn Festival when you go, otherwise you can leave Niuniu behind and keep us company. Old lady Gu held Niuniu tightly. After a long journey, Zhang Yuniang didn't want to take the children with her, but Gu Mingda wanted to take the children back. The reason was that he was afraid that the old man would be exhausted and the children would get lost again. The second reason was that the scenery in Zhangzhou Prefecture was different from other places, and he also wanted to take the children to broaden their horizons. Just as the Gu family had packed their bags, someone came to the door. Brother Gu, I haven't congratulated you on getting the first place yet. After not seeing each other for several months, Sun Jiaxing's face was now rosy and he looked very high-spirited. Gu Mingda was also surprised to see him, and said with a bow, the news that brother Sun got the second place in the examination has spread all over the city. I should congratulate brother Sunday. Sun Jiaxing smiled heartily and said, it was just luck. It was all thanks to Niuniu. If she hadn't reminded me, I don't know if I would have survived to come back. The Gu family was surprised when they heard this. When I arrived in Beijing, other fellow townspeople invited me to stay at Zaya guest house, thinking it was cheaper than other hotels. I was about to move in, but suddenly I remembered Niuniu's advice and changed to another hotel. Although I spent more money, I escaped a disaster. Unfortunately, my fellow townsman was greedy and refused to change with me. After the new year, there was a fire in Zaya guest house, and many candidates were burned. If many people were unable to take the exam, I'm afraid it would not be so easy for me to pass the exam. The adults in Beijing also joked that the Jinshi of our class might be the worst batch. Although Sun Jiaxing said so, he looked like he was not affected by these words at all. Gu Mingda said, brother Sun is too modest. Even if the inn caught fire, only dozens of candidates from the inn could not take the exam. How could it be so widespread? Sun Jiaxing sighed and said, before the incident, the owner of Zayu Inn bought all the houses on that street and connected them to become the first inn in Beijing. When the fire broke out, there were 300 candidates living in his inn. Burning a few houses was not a big deal. So many candidates got together to sue the inn for being careless and made a fuss in Jingzhou Prefecture for several days. This fire was indeed the fault of the inn. Jingzhou Prefecture also sentenced the inn to pay compensation to the candidates. The compensation ranged from thousands of taels to hundreds of taels, which ruined their future. The former wealthy merchants in Beijing collapsed overnight and sold many properties to settle the lawsuit. The fire was so big that it took 2 days to put it out. My fellow villager was lucky and only burned his hands. The unlucky one was burned to the bone. Sun Jiaxing was very scared when he mentioned this. Sun Jiaxing sent many gifts to the Gu family this time, but the most precious one was a heavy gold collar. Sun Jiaxing ignored Gu Mingda's obstruction and insisted on putting the gold collar on Niuniu's neck. Niuniu felt her neck sink and her head didn't seem to be her own. She said, "It's so heavy, I can't stand anymore." Sun Jiaxing laughed and said, "This is just the beginning. When you get married, I will make you a big golden headpiece." "Brother Sun, this is too expensive. It's just a casual remark from a child. You don't have to give such a generous gift." Gu Mingda helped Niuniu take off the gold collar. But Sun Jiaxing insisted on giving it to her, saying, "Although it was just a casual remark from Niuniu, it saved my life and my future. Niuniu is my little benefactor, and I should give her a valuable gift." Niuniu held the gold collar in front of Sun Jiaxing and said, "Uncle Sun, thank you for giving me the gold collar. I want to give it to your baby as a gift." Sun Jiaxing couldn't help laughing again and said, "What a pity. I made a pair of these collars, and I left one for Changshao at home." "Changshao?" Niuniu looked surprised. Sun Jiaxing smiled and explained, "Your aunt gave birth to a son 10 days ago. His nickname is Changshao." Gu Mingda congratulated him repeatedly. Sun Jiaxing and his wife had been married for 10 years without a child, but now they are content with a child. When talking about the child, Sun Jiaxing couldn't hide the smile on his face. Changshao's eyes are like Niuniu, big. Changshao's nose is also like Niuniu, small and delicate. If someone who didn't know what Sun Jiaxing said heard it, they might think Changshao was Niuniu's younger brother. At this point, Sun Jiaxing showed his true intention and said, "Brother Gu, my wife and I like Niuniu very much. If possible, can you be our daughter?" The second update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 137. Gu Mingda's fists hardened when he heard this. Seeing that he looked unhappy, Sun Jiaxing immediately changed his words and said, "Brother Gu, if you don't want to, it's also good to take her as your goddaughter." Niuniu saved his life, as well as the lives of his wife and children. They have a formal status, so that the couple can be good to Niuniu without worrying about outsiders gossiping. Zhang Yuniang gently pulled Gu Mingda's sleeve. Gu Mingda calmed down a little and said, "We need to ask Niuniu if she is willing to do this. Niuniu is not the kind of child who is nosy. Since Sun Jiaxing has brought it up, she will naturally not object." Gu Mingda, on the other hand, still looked at this friend who wanted to snatch the child from him with a nose that was not a nose and eyes that were not eyes. Although Sun Jiaxing felt guilty, he really got a precious daughter. Now the status is determined verbally, and the two families will officially hold a banquet for this matter after Gu Mingda's provincial examination. The Gu family was busy packing their luggage, and Sun Jiaxing, the guest, was only busy entertaining the child. "My dear, call me daddy again." Sun Jiaxing held Niuniu tightly. Niuniu kept calling out, "Sun daddy." Sun Jiaxing took advantage of Gu Mingda not noticing this and whispered, "Niuniu, just call me daddy." Although Niuniu recognized her godfather, the daddy at the top of her heart was still Gu Mingda. "No, my dad told me to call you Sun daddy," Niuniu said. Sun Jiaxing didn't expect Gu Mingda to be on guard against him, and he immediately looked regretful. Sun Jiaxing didn't plan to stay at Gu's house for long this time, he just said he was going to Zhangzhou Prefecture to do some work and was ready to go with them. After Gu Mingde packed his bag, he went to the government office to say goodbye to Magistrate Wu, and then took the children to the Luo family to say goodbye. After everything was arranged, the Gu family set off. The old couple of the Gu family and Lu Xiru watched the whole family leave on the outskirts of the city. This trip is still with the caravan, but the route of Zhangzhou Prefecture is different. Nayunio looked regretful and said, I thought I could pass by Grandpa Sun's house and see Xiao Changshao. I also prepared a gift for him. Sun Jiaxing smiled and asked, what gift did Guibao prepare? Let Daddy see it. As soon as he called himself Dad, Sun Jiaxing successfully received another eye knife from Gu Mingde, but Sun Jiaxing was still like nothing happened. Nayunio opened the small package she brought with her, and there was a wooden amulet in it. I asked my grandfather to help carve this. I want to give it to Xiao Changshao to bless him to grow up healthy, Nayunio said. This amulet is about the size of 2 copper coins, a thin piece, strung with a red rope, and it is not made of precious wood, but it can be carved very finely and looks very attentive. Zhang Yuniang said with a smile, I always see your grandfather carving wood with a carving knife, but I don't know what the old man carved. It turns out that it's all for you. Nayunio explained, Mom, not all of them were given to me. Grandpa took some of the things he carved out and sold them to buy snacks for us. Since Nayunio came to this family, the originally confused old man Gu has been getting better day by day. In the past, when he was in the countryside, the old man was more confused and less sober, but now it's the opposite. Sun Jiaxing carefully put away the amulet and said, then Daddy thanks Sister Nayunio for her kindness on behalf of Changshao. When Sun Jiaxing is not fighting for the children, he is a good chat partner. He is talented and knowledgeable. He can make Gu Zhao and Nayunio revolve around him by telling a few historical stories. Gu Mingde was very jealous of this situation, but he was holding back and didn't say anything. After finally passing the post station to rest, Zhang Yuniang took advantage of the fact that there was no one around and whispered, my dear, you have been circling around Daddy's son, and your daddy is jealous. Nayunio's eyes widened and said, why is he jealous? I love you too the most. Zhang Yuniang felt relieved when she heard this, but still said, Daddy is afraid that you think Daddy's son is better than him. Nayunio lowered her head and thought for a while, then jumped out of Zhang Yuniang's arms and ran into Gu Mingde's room. Gu Mingde was writing a policy paper, and suddenly a little girl in a pink dress rushed into his arms. Daddy, you are my favorite daddy, Nayunio said in a baby voice. Gu Mingde was stunned when he heard this. Daddy should be happy, Nayunio said with a smile. Gu Mingde picked up Nayunio and looked at Zhang Yuniang, who was standing at the door with a gratified face. After many years of marriage, there is a tacit understanding, and even without too many words, they can understand each other's thoughts. Gu Mingde has always been confident, but when he met Sun Jiaxing, he was afraid that he would be outdone in Niu Niu's heart because he thought about the fact that he was the second in high school, well-educated, and humorous. All of Gu Mingde's worries seemed to disappear at this moment. He opened his mouth and silently said thank you to his wife. At night, Niu Niu still slept between her parents. But this night, the little one didn't sleep well. In the middle of the night, she suddenly cried. Niu Niu, wake up, wake up! Zhang Yuniang gently woke her daughter up. Niu Niu opened her eyes, smelled the reassuring fragrance of her mother in the dark, and immediately threw herself into her arms. Be good, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, your parents are right next to you, Zhang Yuniang said softly. Gu Mingde also patted his daughter's back gently. I had a very bad dream, woo woo. Nayunio couldn't help crying again when she thought of what happened in her dream. Not to mention Nayunio's special physique, the couple couldn't help but feel distressed when they saw their child so sad. Dreams are the opposite, don't be afraid, Zhang Yuniang coaxed. Nayuniu sobbed for a long time again. It was hard for her to remember the business. She said, "It will rain heavily tomorrow morning. We will be trapped here." The mountain collapsed and buried many people. Gu Mingda couldn't stay in bed after hearing this, and he got up directly. "I'll go and call Boss Jean now. We will set off now and rush to the next place where we can stay. We also need to notify the people at the post station and let them hide in advance," Gu Mingda said. He didn't want to believe that such a thing would happen. But his daughter's dreams were always real. There was only an old postmaster and 2 postmen in the post station now, so it was easy to persuade them. Zhang Yuniang immediately said, "Since we have to leave before dawn, I will pack up first and then wake up the children." The couple discussed the countermeasures in the shortest time possible, without any objections, and each firmly implemented the other's decision. The first person Gu Mingda woke up was Sun Jiaxing. "Let's leave now, brother Gu, are you confused?" Sun Jiaxing reluctantly got up and opened the door with a quilt, and immediately fell back into bed. Gu Mingda said concisely, "Nayuniu had a bad dream." Sun Jiaxing's sleepiness flew away immediately, and he jumped out of the bed. Go, go, go. Hurry up. We can't stay here anymore." First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 138. Sun Jiaxing's reaction was unexpected by Gu Mingda. "Brother Sun, don't worry about packing your luggage now. Could you please accompany me and persuade Boss Jean and Yi Cheng together?" The reason why Gu Mingda wanted to take Sun Jiaxing with him was also very simple. Sun Jiaxing was a Nujinshi, and he had a great reputation, which made it easier to persuade these people. Sun Jiaxing paused while packing his luggage, and then asked, "Zongd, how are you going to persuade them? Can you not mention Nayuniu?" Sun Jiaxing had seen how powerful Niu was. He didn't want her to be exposed to others, and he didn't want his precious daughter to be in any danger. If those caring people knew that Nayuniu had such ability, no one knew what they would do. Gu Mingda loved Niu more than him, and of course he understood this, and said, "I will tell them that I had a nightmare." When Sun Jiaxing heard this, he thought about it and said, "Let me do the talking." Gu Mingda was stunned when he heard this and said, "Brother Sun, you don't have to be like this." Sun Jiaxing shook his head and said, "For me, it's easier to persuade them." Although Gu Mingda enjoys the closeness between his friend and his daughter, he is not willing to put his friend in danger. Seeing that he was about to refuse, Sun Jiaxing said directly, "Zongd, now is not the time to be humble. Human lives are at stake, so don't be polite to me." The two of them went to find Boss Jean, the caravan leader, and called Yi Cheng. "I dreamed that tomorrow morning there would be a downpour that would make it impossible to travel. The heavy rain would wash away the mountains behind us and we would all be buried here." In the middle of the night, Sun Jiaxing's words immediately made Boss Jean and Yi Cheng wake up. "Master Sun, please don't joke around," Boss Jean said. Sun Jiaxing shook his head and said, "I'm serious. Master Sun, although our post station is backed by a mountain, I have been working as a postmaster here for 30 years, and there has never been a heavy rain that washed away the mountain. You can live in peace of mind at this time." The postmaster thought that the Sun family was prosperous. This Nujinshi was just having fun with them when he had nothing to do. Boss Jean also said, "Master Sun, Yuershan from our caravan is observing the sky. He said that tomorrow will be a sunny day and it should not rain." The two of them obviously didn't take these words to heart at all. Boss Jean and Yi Cheng had worked hard all day, but they were called out in the middle of the night. They had already suppressed their anger. If they hadn't seen Sun Jiaxing as a new scholar and saw a bright future, they would have turned against each other. When Sun Jiaxing heard what they said, he was not surprised at all. Instead, he said, "Have you heard about the fire at Zaya Guest House in Beijing at the beginning of the year? The capital is far away, so it is difficult for news to reach other places. But of the two people in front of me, one is the head of the caravan and the other is the postmaster. The caravan traveled north and south, and those who were greeted and sent off by the Yicheng were all officials, and they were all well informed. I've heard a little bit about it, Lao Yicheng said cautiously. Sun Jiaxing explained, I was originally going to stay at the Zaya guest house that day, but as soon as I entered, I felt so flustered that I moved to another place. I was able to escape the disaster, but it was a pity that my fellow countrymen died in the fire. It's a disaster, I missed the test. Sun Jiaxing once again concealed the traces of Niu. Now I am so flustered, my eyelids are twitching, and I have had such a nightmare again. Of course, if you don't believe it, forget it. Anyway, Zongd and I are about to set off now. After Sun Jiaxing finished speaking, he turned to look at Gu Mingde. They were both smart people and didn't say anything more. But just such a blank space frightened Boss Jean and Lao Yicheng with their faces full of surprise and uncertainty. I just got a granddaughter last month, that's all. I just trust him this time, and I'll just hide away for a few hours. Old Yicheng turned around and packed his things with a slight trembling. Boss Jean called his deputy. The deputy was terribly sleepy and said, Brother, UER has been with us for so long and has never made a mistake in observing the sky. Why do you have to listen to others? The brothers traveled for a whole day before they lay down and got up again. I'm afraid I won't be able to bear it. Boss Jean's expression changed several times and he asked, How many people are there in our caravan? The deputy replied, There are 40 brothers in our team, brother, don't you remember? Boss Jean nodded and said, 40 people, behind them are 40 families of wives and children. We can't afford to gamble. The deputy was startled when he heard this, but he still felt that there was no need to do this. Boss Jean waved his hand and said, I didn't believe it at first, but after Mr. Sun mentioned what happened in Jingzhou, my heart has always been worried. You are worried that the brothers will not have a good rest. It is simple. The worst is to rest for one more day at the next place. I've been leading a caravan for 10 years, and in our line of work, it's never wrong to be careful. The originally dark inn became brightly lit in an instant, and everyone started to move. However, sleepiness and impatience were written on everyone's faces, and they occasionally uttered a few curses in a low voice. Niu was surrounded by Zhang Yun Niang in her arms. Listening to the sounds outside, she whispered, Mom, if my dream is not accurate, will it hurt Daddy Sun? The little girl already knew that Sun Jiaxing took the blame for her. Zhang Yuniang said, If I don't allow you, Grandpa Sun will not blame you, because you have good intentions, right? Niu nodded reluctantly, but her face was still full of tangles. Zhang Yuniang sighed and said, Your grandpa did these things for you because he regards you as his daughter. He loves you and is willing to bear the consequences for you. If he knew that you were so unhappy, he would be sad. Niu forced a smile and said, I don't want him to be sad. More than 50 people traveled with the carriage in the dark, from dusk to dawn, but still did not reach the next resting station. Already exhausted, and traveling day and night, some people in the caravan have already loudly criticized. It's such a good day, it doesn't look like it's going to rain, it just wants to torment people. I didn't die from the mountain soil, but I was exhausted first. After all, they were concerned about Sun Jiaxing's official status and didn't dare to say too much. It's just that the atmosphere in the caravan is really bad now. Sun Jiaxing always looked calm. Gu Mingde patted his shoulder and comforted him softly. Sun Jiaxing shook his head and said, It's okay, I believe Niu. Gu Mingde sighed and said, If you hadn't taken the initiative to take responsibility for this, I would be the one being scolded. It's me who has implicated you. Sun Jiaxing was unhappy and said, Zongd, I did it for my daughter, not for you. As soon as he finished speaking, A cry of surprise came from the caravan. Wang Xiaoxi fell off the horse. The caravan stopped. Wang Xiaoxi is the nephew of the deputy of the caravan. The young man is honest and hard-working. He just joined the caravan and tried hard to perform well. He was overworked during the day and couldn't stand the journey in the middle of the night. He dozed off on the horse and accidentally fell off. Now he is holding his leg and crying in pain. Brother, I want to find that Sunday even if he is an official, I want to find him. Little Shitu is in so much pain, and I don't know if his leg is broken. The deputy ignored Boss Jean's obstruction and rushed towards the carriage where Sun Jiaxing and Gu Mingda were sitting. It's dawn, and the heavy rain is coming. The sun is about to come out. My little Shitu's leg is about to be broken, will you compensate? The deputy opened the carriage curtain with red eyes, as if he was going to settle the account severely. Gu Mingda hurriedly protected Sun Jiaxing behind him, and before he could speak to defend himself, he suddenly heard the sound of dripping. The heavy rain came without any sign, and hit the deputy of the caravan in the face. The second update. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shenshen. Chapter 139. The deputy of the caravan was caught in the rain and froze in place. Boss Jean hurriedly pulled the man back and couldn't stop apologizing to Sun Jiaxing and Gu Mingda. Lord Sun, Scholar Gu, I'm really sorry. Xiao Shitu is his nephew. He was just worried about him and didn't mean to offend him. Please forgive me. After saying this, Boss Jean held his deputy and apologized to Sun Jiaxing. Sun Jiaxing waved his hand and said, Forget it, Boss Jean, the most important thing now is to find a place to rest. Boss Jean often travels on this trade route and is very familiar with the situation along the way. He said, there is a village not far ahead. There is a postman's house there. I will talk to him in a while. Let's stay in the village. Even if the rain was so heavy that the vision was blurred, the group still walked towards the village in the dense and thick rain. It was just 2 miles, and an ordinary carriage would take at most a quarter of an hour to travel. Now it took a full hour in the heavy rain to arrive. The villagers could earn money by staying with the caravan, so no one said no. Sir Sun, the best family in the village is Mr. Li's. He heard that you wanted to stay, so he has already cleaned up the house, the postman said attentively. Sun Jiaxing is now an official of the Hanlin Academy who is officially granted salary by the court. He is only in his 30s. If nothing unexpected happens, he will naturally have a bright future. The country gentry are also happy to sell good things to young officials like him and make good friends with him. Sun Jiaxing's family is wealthy and he is not short of money at all. He directly ordered his long-serving servant to send the silver and money over first. After the money was collected, he took the Gu family and rushed over with an umbrella. Unlike the mud houses of ordinary families in the countryside, Mr. Li's family is obviously well off. Not only did they directly occupy a large area at the end of the village, but they also built a courtyard with 3 blue bricks and large tile houses. Mr. Li is a young man under 30 years old. He is very polite in his speech and his demeanor does not look like an ordinary country gentleman. Our family admires scholars the most. I am not afraid of you laughing at me. I also thought about taking the imperial examination in the past, but unfortunately I am ordinary in talent. I have studied with the teacher for many years, but I still don't understand, Mr. Li said with a smile. The sedan chair was carried by everyone. Now that they are staying in their house, no one will say anything unpleasant. Sun Jiaxing glanced at Mr. Li's children. They all looked sick and seemed not very smart. Sun Jiaxing closed his eyes and praised, your sons all look handsome and will definitely achieve academic success in the future. Mr. Li was naturally overjoyed and said, Mr. Sun, I am lucky to have you say this. Mr. Li also inquired in advance and knew that Sun Jiaxing did not bring his family with him, but he heard that he brought his beloved goddaughter with him. His eyes fell on the only little girl in the group, and his eyes suddenly stopped. Nayuniu didn't know why, but she always felt uncomfortable when she saw this person, so she hid behind Zhang Yuniang. Zhang Yuniang remembered that her daughter was always generous outside. Although she didn't know why her daughter suddenly became shy, she still cooperated and protected her daughter behind her. The daughter of Lord Sun's family is very beautiful. How can ordinary people see such an outstanding girl? Li Yuanwei praised enthusiastically. He thought of the glimpse just now, and almost thought that he was dazzled. He wanted to take a few more glances, but Zhang Yuniang protected her tightly. Sun Jiaxing didn't feel this subtle undercurrent, but was very proud of others' praise for Nayuniu, and said, "Our Guibao is really the smartest girl in the world. I only told her the story of the 24 filial exemplars once, and she remembered it clearly and could tell it to me." He and Lu Xiru are similar, both are experienced Nayuniu flatterers. When talking about the good things of the little girl, they can talk about it for several hours without repeating themselves. Li Yuanwei cooperated with a look of amazement. It's really a magical power, but it's a pity that she was born a girl by mistake. Sun Jiaxing did not have such regrets, and said, "Daughters also have their own advantages. Such a caring little girl, I would not change it even if I had 10 sons." Li Yuanwei deliberately led the topic to Niu Niu, and asked about Niu Niu's birthday and age without leaving any trace. Zhang Yuniang rarely interrupted, but perhaps because of Niu Niu's strange behavior, she said before Sun Jiaxing spoke, "This child turned 7 last month." Li Yuanwei smiled and said, "She looks only 5 or 6 years old, I didn't expect that she is already 7 years old." Zhang Yuniang chuckled and said, "This child grows slowly, so she looks young." Sun Jiaxing has already recognized Niu Niu as his goddaughter, so he naturally knows Niu Niu's birthday and age. When he heard Zhang Yuniang say this, he opened his mouth. Although he didn't understand why, he didn't expose it on the spot. Li Yuanwei continued to inquire about Niu Niu, but was also changed by Zhang Yuniang without leaving any trace. After the greetings with Mr. Li were over and the group moved into the guest house, Sun Jiaxing couldn't help but speak. "Sister-in-law, what did I say wrong just now? You know my situation. I have been waiting for a long time to have a biological child. Is it possible not to tell others the child's birth date and age easily? Is there any taboo that I don't understand?" Sun Jiaxing didn't think that Zhang Yuniang was targeting him, but thought it was some strange custom. Zhang Yuniang shook her head and said, "I don't know why I do this." Sun Jiaxing was stunned. Zhang Yuniang continued to explain, "Nayuniu seems to be afraid of Mr. Li, so I don't want him to know too much about Nayuniu." Sun Jiaxing didn't expect this to be the reason. He squatted down, level with Nayuniu's eyes, and asked in a gentle voice, "My dear, why are you afraid of Mr. Li? Did he offend you in any way?" Nayuniu shook her head and whispered, "I don't know, but I want to hide when I see him. I'm staying in his house, and I'm still talking about him behind his back. Isn't it not good?" Sun Jiaxing couldn't help laughing when he heard it. He stretched out his hand and gently patted the girl's soft head, saying, "Although we are staying here, we have also paid him money. We don't owe him." Nayuniu breathed a sigh of relief. Sun Jiaxing added, "If you are afraid of him, then it must be his problem. Our good boy is not wrong." Nayuniu's eyes widened slightly. Although she was very happy to be protected by her relatives unconditionally, she still said, "Sun Daddy, everyone makes mistakes, even saints make mistakes." Sun Jiaxing said, "In my heart, Nayuniu is right to do anything." Li Yuanwei, who was staying in the main courtyard, thought of the face he had just seen. The more he thought about it, the more wrong it was. He hurriedly got up and went into the backyard in the heavy rain, and walked into a room filled with a strong smell of medicine. First update. After Xiao Fubao's life was stolen, she became the favorite of the Beijing group. Author, Muyun Shen. Chapter 140. Cough, cough, cough. The woman's dull cough fell into Li Yuanwai's ears. Li Yuanwai walked in quickly, took the medicine bowl from the maid, and considerately fed the sick woman sitting on the bed with medicine. After who drank the bowl of medicine obediently, she said softly, "Sir, I heard that there is a guest staying in our house, or is it a Hanlin master?" Li Yuanwai nodded, and then talked about what happened today, and told Hu about the greetings between him and Sun Jiaxing. When Mrs. Hu heard that her sons were praised, her face lit up strangely, and she said, "That's great. The master of the Hanlin Academy will not lie. Since he said so, our brothers will definitely bring honor to the family in the future." Mr. Li also responded, saying, "The children will definitely get better and better. You should also take care of your health and get better soon. By then, you will also be the wife of the official family." Mrs. Hu smiled with difficulty and said, "My husband, I'm afraid I don't have that blessing." Mr. Li looked at his wife's increasingly declining appearance, and couldn't help feeling sad in his heart. They were originally the same age, and his wife had been bedridden for many years. Now they looked like two generations. "Actuan, don't say such depressing words," Mr. Li comforted. Mrs. Hu shook her head and said, "My husband, when I'm gone, you will make Hong'er your wife. She is a dutiful person and will definitely take good care of you and the children." Mr. Li felt sad, but he also knew that his wife was indeed at the end of her life. But he was not willing to talk about her afterlife, and instead thought of Nayuniu whom he saw today, and asked, "Actuan, do you still remember that child back then? Is there anything special about her?" When Mrs. Hu suddenly heard him mention this, a trance appeared on her face. "Birthmark. There is a red birthmark on her arm, very small, like a small fish," Mrs. Hu said. Mr. Li looked embarrassed. "My husband, why do you suddenly ask about that child? Did something happen to her?" Mrs. Hu asked. "I saw a little girl who looked very similar to the one in Beijing." "Forget it, don't think about it. It shouldn't be her. This child is already 7 years old. We watched her sink into the river back then, it must not be her, it must not be," Mr. Li said. Seeing the struggle on her husband's face, Mrs. Hu hurriedly held his hand and said, "Husband, don't think too much. The child can't be alive. You also said that the child I saw today is already 7 years old, and the age doesn't match." Mr. Li nodded vigorously, then looked at his wife and the blue brick and tile houses around him, and said, "Actuan, if we hadn't done this back then, would you still be fine now, and the children would be fine too?" Mrs. Hu smiled bitterly and said, "Husband, if you look closely, we have done more than just this one wrong thing. If there is really retribution, it should be on me alone, don't implicate you and the children." After Mr. Li came out of his wife's room, his heart was still hanging. He waved his hand and called the maid who served at home over, and whispered a few words. In the guest house, Nayuniu seemed to have forgotten about Mr. Li. Now she was jumping around, just like nothing happened. Gu Mingda went out in the heavy rain, saying that he was going to discuss something with Mr. Qin. Gu Yan picked up the book and started reading. Not only did he read it himself, he also pulled his younger brother and sister to urge them to study together. Gu Zhao didn't want to study. He rolled his eyes and held Sun Jiaxing tightly. "Uncle Sun, please tell us the story of Jig River again. I love it." He was afraid that Sun Jiaxing would not tell it, so he pulled Nayuniu over and said, "Sister loves it too." Anyway, for Gu Zhao, as long as he didn't study, he could do anything. Sun Jiaxing glanced at Gu Yan, nodded at the young boy, and then said, I can continue to tell you the story of Jik River, but after listening to it, you will practice big characters. Nayunia was not so resistant to studying, but she was also happy to listen to stories. Gu Zhao, on the other hand, had a bitter face and said, "Uncle Sun, how can you bargain?" Sun Jiaxing stretched out his hand and flicked the silly boy's forehead, saying, "If you say so, then I won't tell the story either." Gu Zhao immediately didn't dare to continue talking. Sun Jiaxing said, "Jik River starts from Linzhou, passes through 9 prefectures along the way, and finally reaches the capital. Guang'an River in your Guang'an County is also one of the tributaries of Jik River. When we entered the village today, the river we saw outside was also one of the tributaries of Jik River. There are 10 tributaries of Jik River in Guanglan Prefecture, large and small. Although these tributaries are independent, they can eventually converge through Jik River." Gu Zhao suddenly realized something when he heard him say this, and couldn't help asking, "Uncle Sun, we have been on the road for several days, and we are still in Guanglan Prefecture." Sun Jiaxing said, "What do you think? Guanglan Prefecture is bigger than you think." Gu Zhao exclaimed. Sun Jiaxing was in high spirits, and he talked about all the unofficial and official histories at once. It is said that during the reign of Emperor Muzong of the previous dynasty, the river estuary burst, and the great hero Changpeng, who was only 1 month old, took a wooden basin with his mother and drifted along the Jik River, all the way from Linzhou to the capital. Nayunio listened attentively and said, "This is amazing, such a young child can drift along the river for so long, he is really lucky." Sun Jiaxing smiled and said, "Great heroes always have some strange experiences when they were young. Of course, whether they are true or false, we, the descendants, have no way of knowing." Nayunio held her chin with both hands and said, "When I think of the baby sitting in the wooden basin and floating in the water, I feel so sorry for him. Fortunately, we left the post house, otherwise we might be fleeing in the wooden basin now." Gu Zhao said, "Sister, I heard from the bad uncle that when you were picked up as a child, there was also a wooden basin. Maybe your family also put you in the wooden basin and floated down the river." Nayunio shook her head when she heard this and said, "But they said they picked me up on the grass. Could it be that I was washed onto the shore from the river?" Gu Zhao was also unsure and turned to look at the smartest person in the room, Sun Jiaxing. Sun Jiaxing was not involved in the case, and he did not know what happened back then. How could he judge such a lawsuit? He said frankly, "Nayuniu, I'm sorry, Daddy can't explain it clearly." Nayuniu was not disappointed, but said, "Daddy son, the teacher said that human power is limited, which is normal. After all, none of us knows everything." After Sun Jiaxing finished the story, he urged the 2 children to practice calligraphy. At this time, there was a knock on the door. A woman came in with a bucket of hot water and said with a smile, "Sir Sun, young master and young lady, our master is afraid that the children will get sick easily after being caught in the rain, so he ordered the old slave to boil some hot water and serve the children to take a bath." As the eldest son, Guyan has long been accustomed to being humble, and said directly, "Let my sister take a bath first." The woman's eyes flashed with joy when she heard this. The second update.